Hey guys, it's me Zain and today we're gonna talk about how to care for those orchids which you just bought. All the orchid genera are different and every genus actually has a slightly different care. And how do I manage to talk about that like in one video, care for all the orchids? I'm not gonna do that exactly, but if you think about it, all these popular hybrids which you can find in like garden centers and these kind of stores like Phalaenopsis orchids, Oncidiums, Dendrobiums and Callias and these types of orchids, with a little change in their care, well, they actually can survive in our homes. We can categorize the newly purchased orchids into two categories because, well, it's a pretty easy categorizing here. Well, you can buy orchids which are in bloom or in bud, and you can purchase ones which aren't in bloom and they have no buds and no flower spikes. If you buy an orchid in these garden centers, most probably you will find them with buds or with flowers, because these garden centers and flower shops and these kind of stuff, well, they want to sell their things. And how to sell orchids? Well, with flowers and with buds, because you know, that's what these non-orcholic people are looking for. Like, no offense. Well, you can find orchids without blooms and with no buds and no flower spikes more on these orchid shows and orchid marketplaces, and when you buy orchids from a nursery and you order it from like online. Also, you can find some orchids without blooms in these flower shops when they already wilted away, faded away the blooms, and after that they put it on a discount. So these are the two types of orchids which you bought. If we are here at this topic, let's mention the Phalaenopsis, because if you buy a Phalaenopsis it will come like this, with blooms staked up in a pot, stuff like that. Mine Phalaenopsis here is like already wilting away the flowers, but that's okay. It will rebloom after I care for it properly. So if you buy a Phalaenopsis in a flower shop, or you were gifted a Phalaenopsis orchid in a flower shop, what do you do first? At first, as it is in bloom, you have to provide the care that genus needs. Actually, Phalaenopsis orchids need like watering when the roots are already dry, and they need like bright shade and room temperatures, and it's gonna be okay for a Phalaenopsis orchid. And after the blooms actually withered away, you can repot it, because repotting is a very important aspect here when buying new orchids. For example, here I have another orchid. I just bought it, but it has no flowers because I bought it as a, let's say, more special orchid, because this is a botanical species, not a man-made hybrid like this Phalaenopsis here. So this orchid was actually grown for these kind of orchid collectors like me. Here comes the thing, repotting, because these orchids were grown in the same pot, in the same medium for years and years. They were grown in organic medium. What is organic medium? You know, the bark chips and sphagnum moss and coconut husk pieces and this kind of stuff is the organic medium. And what does the organic medium do? Well, it degrades with time, which means the medium inside the pot will get more and more acidic, which won't be suitable for the root system. The root system might die because of that, and that's a perfect stress factor for the orchid. So repotting is a really important thing when you buy orchids. But when to repot them? Right away you purchase it, just go ahead and repot, or you just wait for some time for some signs to actually appear on the orchid. Well, here's the thing, if you buy an orchid in bloom, at first you have to wait for the blooms till they fade, and well, in the case of Phalaenopsis orchids that's gonna be a long time because they bloom for like endlessly. But if you buy a Phalaenopsis or any other orchid which is in bloom, at first you just care for that orchid regularly, as that genus needs that care, and you just have to enjoy the blooms, and that's that. And when you have to repot, well, let's say they can be like, let's say 3 cases when you have to repot. You can repot after the blooms faded, you can repot when new roots are emerged, and you can slash have to repot when there is some problem going on with the plant. And right now we're going to talk about this. Well, there is this idea about when you buy a Phalaenopsis orchid or any other orchid in the flower shop, you get it in flower. After the flower have wilted, you can and you are safe to repot. You perform a regular Phalaenopsis repot, but don't ever use the same medium for it. And well, that's that, and you just have to wait for the Phalaenopsis orchid or any other orchid to grow and continue its growth and stuff like that. But also you can wait until the orchid actually starts to produce roots and new leaves, because that's when it's starting to really just go into this vegetative growth process and this vegetative business. Because if you wait for that time when it starts to actually create new roots and new leaves and stuff like that, if you repot at that point and you provide fresh new medium, well, if you repot at that time, you can cut away all the dead roots, and at that time you cut away all the dead roots, you remain with some roots. Well, in a happy case, you remain with a lot of roots. In a more sad case, the roots already like rotted away in that medium and you remain with only a few roots. In any case, if you repot when new roots are just grown, that means that the new roots will actually enter the new fresh medium, and it's gonna be a new fresh start for the orchid, and it will mean a minimum stress for the orchid. Because let's imagine there is an orchid, you repot it, and well, for example, you are forced to like cut away a lot of dead roots because they rotted away in the pot, so it will be stress. But if you repot at that time when new roots are created, they can actually perform their thing. They can absorb water and nutrients for the plant, so in that case the stress amount will be minimalized for the orchid, and maybe you will get a happier orchid. Well, yeah, some people say to repot Phalaenopsis orchid right after the blooms have faded. I have done that, nothing happened, they lived, and that's that. And some say only repot when new roots are produced. Both of them is, well, a good idea. You just have to think it for yourself. If you want to play safe, you can wait for the new root tips to actually emerge and to be grown. For example, you just bought a new orchid or ordered a new orchid from an online store or something. It has, for example, it has spider mites or anything, or a fungal infection or something. If it's sick and you don't know what's going on, or you know what's going on and repot is needed, well, no matter the health state or the root system's health state of the orchid, no matter what, you have to change the medium and you have to clean the orchid leaves and the orchid pseudobulbs and everything on the orchid from pest, because that will cause more and more stress. So the longer you wait with the repot in a case of a sick orchid, the worse will it be after that, because the more stress will be gained. There is a thing which called orchid staling. What is that? If you bring a new orchid to your home, there's a high chance your home is a very different environment from that environment in which was grown. So, for example, let's imagine there are these orchid nurseries full of Phalaenopsis, other orchids, stuff like that. It can be an online store, it can be a store which provides orchids for these flower shops, whatever. These orchids have their, let's say, perfect environment there because they want them to produce flowers in the fastest way, let's say. This environment is, let's say, better for the orchid than our home environment and our room temperatures and in indoor environment and stuff like that. So it's gonna be a shock for the orchid if you buy it from a nursery. For example, if you online order your plants, they come from that nursery and right away they are in your home and they have to change their everything, they have to adjust their growth and stuff like that to your home environment. Also, if you buy an orchid from a flower shop, well, those orchids were in a nursery. From a nursery, they traveled into the flower shop or the garden center. They were there for a time, they started to adjust, and after you buy it and bring it to your home, to a different another environment, and they have to readjust again. So there is a time for the orchid when it starts to adjust to your room temperatures, to your environment in the room. So why is that so important? Orchids are slow creatures. They need their adjusting time, they need time for like thinking what to do. So, you know, orchids are slow, you have to wait for those orchids. But with every orchid, every single orchid, it will be a different amount of time. For example, there can be some orchids which are not even affected with this environmental change, and you bring them home and they just continue living, and that's that, and like nothing happened, they just continue their happy life. But there are some orchids which can be different. It can happen to any orchid. No new roots, no new leaves will be grown for like an amount of time, and in extreme cases it can go up to 1 whole year. And it's really just up to the orchid how fast it wants to get used to this new environment. But if you are lucky, it will be like a few days, few weeks, stuff like that. If you're unlucky and you get an orchid which is really finicky about this environmental change, it can actually stay for a whole year. And for example, I bought a Phalaenopsis schilleriana in the Budapest Orchid Show. I think it was the last orchid show in springtime. Well, I brought home my species Phalaenopsis schilleriana. I repotted it because I thought it's gonna be okay if I repot it right away. I repotted it into new medium. I used leca, pebbles and stuff like that, and I waited for some new leaves and for some new roots. Nothing. It came the summer and I thought, oh, okay, summer is gonna be pretty warm and sunny and stuff like that. My orchid will be super happy to do like some growing stuff. Nothing. Okay, then fall came and I waited some reactions for my Phalaenopsis schilleriana to do something. Nothing. And right now, for I think it was like a week or 2 weeks ago, it started to grow 2 new roots, and after that it started to produce a new flower spike also. So let's do a quick count of the months here. I bought it in March, so it's April, and I cannot count the months in English. It was 8 months ago when I bought it. It was nothing, it was doing nothing for like 8 long months. And right now it's like giving me a flower spike, so it's okay. Actually, they will have these changes inside happening in the plant. It's not a dormancy or a rest or something. They are just adjusting to this new environment of yours. Now, if you buy a new orchid, for example, like this, I bought this. What should I do with it after I done all the things which I talked about right now? I had to quarantine it because this is a new orchid to my environment. I don't know what it has. It might have some pests, it might have a fungal disease, it might have any disease inside the plant. I don't know this plant. Should I risk to put this into my collection next to my other orchids, touching leaves, stuff like that, same air and air movement, stuff like that? Should I risk my entire collection because of this one orchid? No. I should separate this orchid, keep it on a different place, not close to my orchids. And why is that? I don't want to share pests, I don't want to share any disease, I don't want to share anything, I don't want any leaf touching and stuff like that. Every person has a different idea about how long the quarantine should be or the separating should be for a plant, because you can quarantine it for like a whole year, you can quarantine it for like a month. It just depends to you and to your logic. Observe the plant, observe if there are any pests on the leaves, in the root system, between the pseudobulbs, observe if it's growing good or not, if it's producing what it should be producing, if it has like any fusarium or something like that. So observe your plant, and if you came to the conclusion that your orchid is perfectly healthy, you can put it into your collection. It still might have something lurking inside, but if you observed it thoroughly, maybe you can be sure that it's healthy enough to put it into your collection. Some people do that, some people don't. But you can actually treat your orchid preventively for something. If you brought them home, you can treat it for anything which you like to treat them, for example, treat it against pests or fungus and stuff like that. If you bring them home, you can do a treatment for your orchid as a preventive measure, not to share anything to your collection. You're just gonna play it more safe in this way. And the last tip here is gonna be that keep an eye on your orchid, because if it changed environment, if it was a stress factor, if it was a setback for the orchid, the main thing which will suffer, besides the orchid itself, the immune system of the orchid. So for a time, until it regains its strength, the immune system won't be that powerful, so it might get easily affected by diseases and this kind of stuff. So yeah, this is my video for today, and this was my Phalaenopsis and my Grammatophyllum scriptum varieties citrinum for today. So I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, click on the like button, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment, subscribe to my other channel, push the notification button bell thingy, and you can follow me on Instagram, and you will find all the links down in the info box. So yeah, see you next time. Bye guys.